Welcome to the beautiful DuPont Country Club. Jason Myrtetus, Anthony Filippo, Bill Meltzer. It is a Flyers Daily Snow the Goalie. What do they call that when you get everybody together? Menage a trois?
No.
They do not call it that.
They don't call it that?
They don't. That's only 3 people, and it's not what we want to suggest. No, it's not what we call it at all.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. We're off and running here, boys.
Usually we have a sound effect for stuff like that. When Bundy curses, like we hit a bomb effect. I don't know what the hell we would play for that, Jay. I don't know sure what sound effect we would play for.
Maybe a flamethrower. Something like that. Well, it's going to be fun here today. We're going to talk to some Flyers alumni. I know Mark Howe's going to join us.
Yeah.
Joe Watson. We're going to talk to Paul Holmgren. We're going to talk to a bunch of them. And we're going to get after it because this is a huge week. Bill, it's friggin' draft week.
It is most exciting week of the year for a lot of us, where it's draft into free agency. The Stanley Cup Finals are just barely over. The Cup's just lifted, and now we're into the draft and just about free agency. So it's prime time before it gets too quiet. So.
Okay, would you guys prefer it a little bit different? Let me just say this: with the Stanley Cup
yes,
going,
is my answer before you even have.
But with the Stanley Cup going as late as it does, would you almost prefer that it were like football, where we had like a little bit of downtime, then the draft and free agency, and then that way it's a little bit closer to the season? Because I've always felt that free agency stops. Really, it's like one day, but really sometimes it goes like 2 days, whatever. But then you're in the 4th of July weekend, and then hockey's like out of your mind for 2 months.
Yeah.
If you could maybe give it like, let's get through
Space
that
it out
holiday,
like the NFL does
get into July for the draft, and then free agency at the end of the month, and then you're like, okay, now we're a little bit closer to the start of the season. I would prefer
it. The NFL, they have their free agency and the draft, and they have a big build up to each of them individually.
Schedule release.
So that they're all they're represented in every month.
Right.
Hockey will never do it. You know why? Because these Canadians, I'll tell you, their cottages and all. That's how they justify them.
Yes.
They just want to get to the freaking cottage
and have their summer.
No cell phone access and have their. I saw this Pierre LeBrun once the cup handed out by the 34th. Yeah. He wants to be at the cottage by June 5th.
Yeah.
So he's done.
I've stayed at one of those cottages up in Ontario one summer. For a couple weeks, and you're right. There is no communication with anybody.
No, it's like dark as it gets.
You put your phone away when you're there.
Yeah,
you're just sitting on a lake and just relaxing, and there's no.
Sounds great.
It was fun. I mean, I'll be honest with you, it was very, very relaxing. But you're right. That's the reason
Watching
why.
Netflix and just
there's nobody even put the TV on while we were up there.
Wow,
it was like reading books. Who's out in the boat fishing, sitting around the campfire at night with the stars in the sky. Like, that's what you did. It's very throwback to like an era that doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah. Cottage up at PEI.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It was I was in the town called Halliburton on Lake Cashagwigamog.
Spell that.
I wish I could.
Yeah.
I wish I could. That's what it was, though. But it was unreal.
I'd like to see the NBA change their layout to their season start Christmas Day and end mid-August.
I agree with you on
There's
that.
this notion in pro sports that people won't watch pro sports when they're on vacation in the summer. Baloney. I watch more.
Yeah, exactly.
I got more time on my hands.
Yeah.
But it is draft week, free agency to follow. A really big offseason is underway. Rick Tockett's the head coach. So we're going to get into all of it. And coming in to join us right now is our first guest, and it's the one and only Joe Watson. Let's go to Joe Watson. Our first guest joining us here on our crossover episode with Flyers Daily and Snow the Goalie is none other than a man who retired in hockey later than anyone has ever retired. And I'm still not buying that he's retired.
Yeah, that's right. He's not officially retired yet.
Yeah, he's not retired. Who's he kidding? It's Joe Watson. Joe, how are you?
Well, fine. I'm glad I'm here talking to you guys. And of course, our golf tournament it was always something to look forward to because we have a lot of the alumni come back and participate. So, and we've had a busy weekend. We were in Conshohocken for a couple of days doing a lot of events there. And I must say it's gone very well.
Did you participate in the pickleball?
No, I'm not a pickleball player.
You had a pickle.
I tried it. Yeah, I tried it once with my wife about 3 weeks ago because I wanted to warm up for this thing. I said I didn't have any success because I played a lot of tennis in my life, and tennis and pickleball are totally different. My God, you got to swing. You swing up, And pickleball, I don't know what the hell you do, but I wasn't making very good contact, so I said, I'm not doing this, so I didn't participate in it.
That's the pro athlete in you coming out, right? Like you have to be really, really good.
You're not going to embarrass himself.
Right? You're not going to go out there and embarrass yourself,
No,
right?
That's true.
And when people would have like a pickup game of basketball, I was like, no, I'll sit this one out. Because I couldn't throw the ball in the ocean, on the edge of the beach. Joe, what's it like getting to see all these faces year after year? I mean, you guys have such a bond with the alumni. It's remarkable, and you're one of the early guys.
Yeah, well, I started our alumni hockey team in 1984. 84, and
Wow.
we had a lot of guys. We've traveled to 9 different countries to play hockey. Our last visit was to Russia 7-8 years ago, and it's nice to see guys come out and participate and help out. And of course, today we got a lot of participation, and we're looking forward to it. And although it's hot, what the hell? That's the way summer's supposed to be. It's supposed to be warm.
People complain about the heat. It's
people
summer.
complain. It's summer. That's the way it is, So, but yeah, I look forward to it, and we'll have a good time. And we walked yesterday. I walked about 5 miles, I guess, yesterday, and I sweated my buns off. And our other things. Brad Marsh has done an incredible job with our alumni. I mean, our alumni is ranked as high as any alumni in the National Hockey League.
I was going to say this, Joe, because I've covered other sports as well.
Yeah.
I don't see an alumni association anywhere.
No.
Like the Flyers.
No.
So active.
That's really active. That's what I mean by that. I mean, there's always an alumni weekend, or they bring people back for things, and it's always a good time. But you guys do more than just one weekend a year. You do it constantly throughout the year. Why is that so important in your mind, to have this association be not only as close as it is, but to be as active and visible as it is?
Well, I played 14 years in the National Hockey League, and it's funny, when you go around to various organizations, various places, they want to talk about the Broad Street Bullies, and now, of course, I was one of the bullies,
right?
And so it keeps our name out there, and we get a lot of appearances because of the Broad Street Bully name. We do. I do a lot of appearances, and I think other players do too. But it's nice to be, give back. We've received a lot of things in our life. Now it's time for us to give back to the community in Philadelphia itself. And not only Philadelphia, we go in the suburban areas, we go in the outlying areas and do a lot of things. And
you're global at this point.
And we're, like I say, we're in Russia 7 years ago.
Yeah.
And all the Russian people want to do is talk about the Broad Street Bullies.
I heard they were treating you guys like you were the Beatles coming to America.
Well, it's true. You're right. It was. I mean, it was incredible how they treated us royally. Man, my God.
You're thinking, what the crazy, right?
Yeah, and you know what? They want to talk about how we dismantled the Soviet Red Army team in 1976. And wherever we went, we played in 4 different communities in Russia, or not cities, and that I saw people with Flyer jerseys on. And Ed would have been so proud. Unfortunately, he wasn't around. I mean, he had passed away, I think, 6 months prior to our trip over there. But every time we went to Europe, Ed would always come to me and say, "Do you see anybody with Flyer jerseys on?" I said, "Oh, yeah, Ed." But he would have really been exceptional with Russia. Oh, my God.
I would have thought from his standpoint, he'd been afraid to go over after that guy ran into his elbow.
Man, yeah, right. But you know what? We want to give back to the community, and we've received a lot. Now it's time to give back, and we have a good participation, and our leadership with Brad Marsh is second to none.
Yeah.
And our alumni, you're right, is just as good as any alumni in the National Hockey League, and probably all the sports.
Yeah, Joe,
take a look today.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
It is.
It's great.
Yeah.
It's great.
Last question for you, Joe.
Yeah.
When Fred Shiro wrote that on the board in 1974, "Win today and walk together forever." I mean, how prophetic was that?
Nope.
Because you guys have been walking together forever, and
we
picked
have.
up a lot of people along the way.
Yeah, we have. It took us a month to figure it out. That's how smart hockey players are. What the
hell does that mean?
What it meant. But you know what? We gathered that, and I must say that it's so true. You couldn't have truer words than what Fred said to us. Walk together forever, and I still think back to those days. And I went and visited Freddie Shearer the day before he passed. He was in the Cooper Medical Center, and he had a little piece of paper and a pencil. He was trying to diagram a play for me in the hospital, and he was gone next
Coach
morning.
to the
But
end.
imagine that, trying to diagram a little play to me, and And I never forgot that. Holy God, what Freddie meant to us as individuals and as a team. And of course, the Russians were still all like they're still upset that we annihilated them. And if Trejak hadn't have played well, we would have beat him 10-1. Right? We outshot him 49-13.
Right.
Yeah.
I could have played net for you that day. Joe, hit them straight. You hit them straight?
Well, I hope they go straight sometimes. Sometimes they don't, but hopefully they go straight today. Yeah.
Your golf game still pretty good, you think?
Yeah, I play quite a bit. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, I enjoy it.
Well, enjoy it. Enjoy the camaraderie.
Yeah, boys.
Have a great day.
Hey, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. You look good, my friend. You really do.
Well,
so you take care of yourself.
You look great.
We're following
but
you.
You might want to get your vision checked.
Okay.
Doctor's orders.
That's right.
Look at that prescription checked on those
All
goggles.
right.
Thanks, Joe.
All right, boys.
Joe
Thank
Watson.
you. Thank
Thanks.
you.
There he is, Joe Watson. And he's been walking together for many years.
Many, many years.
Amazing.
Yes, it's awesome.
If I can have some of that energy next week, forget
Thanks, Joe.
20 years. No, thanks, Joe. The energy he has and he carries still, tremendous.
Oh my God, yeah. Come on now. I mean, he's got 30 years on me, and he's more vibrant than I am.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no question.
Amazing. He only played 836 games in the NHL. I mean, he's played probably 2,000 alumni games.
That's right.
When
He's
you
played
think about
more
it.
alumni games
Yeah.
than he played NHL games.
Yeah. But he was
Uh,
part of that whole thing, 81 years of age. And, we should have wished him happy birthday. It's coming up on July 6th.
Oh, yeah.
The 8-2.
Yeah, wow. Good for
So,
him.
Yeah, absolutely unbelievable to have him. And it's great to be here. You know, we're going to have some guests popping in and out here on this joint episode with Flyers Daily and Snow the Goalie.
Yep.
You're the only Snow the Goalie representative. Bundy's playing.
Well, Bundy's going to come in.
Yeah.
So Bundy will be the second Snow the Goalie
Yeah.
representative. But you're the only Flyers Daily representative.
Well, Bill will be here too. I got reinforcements coming out as well. So Bill those Mondays with Meltzer. With
that's right.
Yeah.
Exactly. No, it's cool. It's a great event. I actually feel bad that I haven't been at it for a while. Last time I was at this alumni event was at the Philadelphia Cricket Club.
Yeah.
Back in the day. It actually was. I had the honor that day of being the first person to sit down with Renberg and Leclerc and Lindros all together for the first
that's
time.
the last time I was at one. That's
Yeah,
what his shirt is
that's
from.
exactly what that's. When I saw that, I was.
I played with Rennie that day.
Yeah. When I saw that shirt, I was like, "That's from that golf tournament."
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was the last time I actually did one of these, and it's always such a cool event.
Yeah.
Right. It just really, really is. And so I was on when Flyers talked to us about it. I was like, you know what? I know Russ couldn't be here because he was traveling, and Bundy was playing. I was like, let's figure out a way to make it work.
Do something. Let's do
something
something with this.
because
Yeah.
this is such a cool event.
You don't get these guys collected together like this
and
very often.
And what most people don't realize, like, I mean, you look at the list of players that are participating, and it's just a fascinating list. People don't understand that sometimes, like, even the smallest players come back for this. It's exciting to have the big names. It's always the names that you always see at these alumni events. But when you see a name like, and it was funny, I mentioned Andy Delmore is here today. Like,
I was at the hat trick Delmore game many years ago,
right?
in
Like
209A.
Like that's a name like, wow, there's you don't usually see a guy like that show up at this. Jeff Chikrin's here.
Yeah,
it's another great one, right? You can come back. Ron Sutter,
Lindsey
Carson, yeah. Who, by the way, one of the things that never gets talked about with Lindsey Carson on that goal in Game 6 against Edmonton in 1987. He sets the screen
the J.J. Daniel goal
for J.J. Daniel's goal, and everybody talks about the Daniel goal. But if Lindsey Carson's not standing in front of the net,
Fuhrer sees it.
Yeah, right, and probably makes that save, right? So it's a whole different thing, and nobody ever gives him the credit for the play like that. So I mean, that's really awesome.
Yeah, some great. We're going to talk to some other former Flyers alumni that are here. Phil Meir is here.
Phil Meir,
one of the goaltenders
he was part of the 35 game streak, right?
He was.
Okay.
Along with Pete Peters.
Yes.
Yeah. The Sutter brothers, two of them at least.
Yeah.
The twins are here, which I love talking to those guys.
They're awesome.
Ronnie Rich, they still look like they could just strap on skates and just give you a couple good mucker grinder shifts. Keep it in the neutral zone.
Yep.
Chip it and let everybody else chase.
Yeah.
Riley Cote's here from Nasty Knuckles. And Cote, you're going to be here. Terry Karkner's in the house, and Karkner lives in the area.
Yeah.
I'd see him skating every once in a while in some adult leagues over at Iceline. And he's still out there, and I think I never went against any of the biggest head I've ever seen on the ice. Just like a big guy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
but joining us right now, is a man. He's done just about every job in the NHL. But I will tell you that all the work that he's done in the NHL and a lot of great work for the Flyers throughout a very storied career, the work he also did and still does with USA Hockey is tremendous. It is former Flyer coach, general manager, president, a man of many skills, Paul Holmgren. Homer, how are you?
Morning, guys.
Good
How are we doing
Good to
today?
see you, Paul.
Happy. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Nice to
Doing
see
well.
you.
What's it like to be here amongst all these alumni again?
You know, the girl that brought me up today said, "Do you play here often?" I said, "I get to play here once a year."
For this.
Whenever the alumni play.
Yeah.
I said, if I had to come here every day to play, out driving an hour and a half, who knows where the ball would go.
Yeah.
So at least I have some idea today.
Yeah.
Do you have a good stock of balls in the bag in case you don't want to be out there walking around in the heat today?
I'm okay. I can kind of keep it straight.
All right.
How's your golf game now these days?
I just had both my hips replaced like about 12 weeks ago, so I'm kind of working my way back into
The fact that you're
form.
even walking around and doing this 12 weeks later, that's pretty impressive.
Well, they get you up walking right away.
Yeah.
That same day.
hours.
So
Yeah.
yeah. So
I'm headed there as well.
Yeah.
Getting that done, are you mad you didn't get it done sooner? That's what everybody tells me. They get it done. They go, I
no,
wish I'd have got it sooner.
like the lot probably since Christmas last year. I had trouble sleeping.
Yeah.
With them, like
That's no
ache.
good.
So if I had to live with what I went through every day, and slept good, I'd have been fine.
Yeah.
But
Bad
hard
sleep
time
is
sli-
equals
hard
an
time.
irritated man. I don't want to see you
Yeah.
irritated because of no sleep.
no, it's no fun. It's no fun being a jerk all the time.
One of the things I asked Joe Watson just earlier, and I wanted to ask you as well. Homer, you've been around a long time. You've seen pro sports, especially in a city like Philadelphia, and an alumni association for the Flyers is on another level. So it's just a little bit different. Why does it matter so much that this group is not only as close as it is, but that it's so visible and involved? Like, why is that important in this community?
Well, I think deep down we all want to get back. I mean, it started years ago with Joe and probably Don Selesky, but Brad Marsh has taken to this incredible level that we're at now as an alumni association. And deep down, we loved our time playing here, loved the fan base. A lot of us love living around here still, and we want to get back. And that's really what it's all about. And then we learned that from playing for the Flyers and playing under Mr. Snyder. And you want to be part of the community, you got to dig in and dive in. And that's kind of where Brad's taking us with this.
That's the DNA of this organization.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you about, the current team right now is in a build phase of a rebuild. When you were general manager, you were not afraid to make really big decisions. And to take the big swings, you got to incur some risk sometimes. And you were a guy, draft day, you traded for Pronger with Spiza, and you saw the dividend that paid. When you look at where the team is right now, all the cap money that's coming, a rising cap coming back into the equation and all of that, is this the exciting part of being, for a general manager, being able to shop? You got a little bank account behind you now. You got a lot of assets. This is the fun part in building it. Today's NHL, it's a tough build because you got to almost be perfect.
Yeah. Well, I like the direction they're heading. I think they got a good group of young guys coming, and obviously with the draft picks they have for this draft, there's multiple ways they can go with it. They can use them to draft or use them as other assets in terms of making a trade, I guess, creating cap space. There's a lot of things you can do with draft picks. So, but I trust Jonesy and Danny and as well as Dan Hilferty. I think they're doing tremendous, and I think the organization's on the right upward track. And I look forward to the draft coming up just because of all the cards that Danny has right now, and the who knows what the opportunities are that he's going to have. But they're staying involved. I'm sure they're staying on the phone lines daily, both him and Jonesy, and working it.
One of the things that's interesting to me, Paul, is I don't think that this organization's ever had a time like right now where there has been a strong long-term commitment to building in a certain way. It was always kind of like, let's get it going. Let's get back at it pretty quick. You have a down year. Let's get back on the horse and pick it back up the next year. Is it almost in your mind when you look at it and you look at it holistically and you go, yeah, in today's NHL, this is the way that it has to be done in order to have sustained long-term success?
Yeah, probably. And
Yeah.
you know, the salary cap's been in place now 19 or 20 years, and it's been a feeling out process. So you think back to when the salary cap first came in, you know, all the players were forced to take a 24% pay cut. The cap was 39 million.
That's incredible.
Yeah, I know. Right?
And you look at how it's gone. I remember when we signed Mike Richards to a 12-year contract, I asked Mr. Schneider, "Are you worried about this?" He said, "No, the cap will be 100 million in 5 years." And you know, without COVID, it may have been. I don't know.
Yeah.
Right.
So now it's, you know, it's back on the move, and it was a different animal when it came in. We're all trying to figure it out, and there's periods of time where, you know, we just did whatever, and
Right.
you know, we could use unlimited or injured reserve to create cap space. You can still do it now, but it's not like it was when
Right.
back in the early days. They've kind of closed up some of the loopholes, and so yeah, now it's a brave new world out there, and the Flyers are, you know, over the last few years here with Danny and Jonesy, they've gone down that road, and like I said, I think they're doing a great job, and I'm really excited about these next few months here, what's ahead, and then, you know, looking forward with the team. I think it's going to be a good ride.
Last question for you, Paul, before we get you out there on that golf course and really put you to the test. Your involvement in USA hockey is very deep. You see U.S. players drafted at the top, USNTDP, the program, the facilities, everything. The growth of the game in the U.S. and producing the kind of players that they're producing both on the men's side and the women's side, frankly. It's astounding to me. A lot of that on the back of guys like you that put in that work early in your career. But what's it like to see it where it is now?
Well, you know, it really kind of coincides with NHL expansion, in my opinion. You look at
Opportunity, right?
Well, just some of the areas that we've expanded to. You look at Florida now, and the Panthers winning the last 2 Stanley Cups. You got players coming out of Florida. Ghost is a good example.
Yeah.
Players
Austin Matthews out of Arizona.
Players coming out of the first overall pick out of Scottsdale, Arizona. Like, who would have imagined that? Like, so, you know, Gary and the people at the NHL have done a good job of putting teams in places and probably taking some abuse along the way. Like, why would you ever have a team in Arizona? And, you know, now they're not there, but they're in Utah, which is another good grounds, breeding grounds for young hockey players. So California, tons of players coming out of California. That's what's incredible to me. Like, and I joke around with my Canadian friends, but I think there's so many young players in the U.S. that are coming up that will. I think if our overall coaching continues to get better, we're going to bypass Canada and start producing the most players.
I love it.
By far, somewhere in the very near future.
Yes,
So, and it's only because of sheer numbers playing the game at a youth level.
Yeah, and you're getting the athletes that may have traditionally turned to football or, you know, the more traditional sports that are now dipping their toe in hockey and seeing a lot of success. Yeah. You gonna have success on the course? You're here.
We're gonna have fun. It's gonna be a warm day, and when I looked this morning the other day and look at the temperature, and oh man, I'm glad I'm riding in a cart. I like to walk, and when I play golf, I like to walk and sometimes carry my bag, but I'm glad I have a cart today.
As you should be.
Yeah, no doubt.
As you should be.
Hit him straight, Paul. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks for doing
My
this.
pleasure. Thanks, guys.
There he is.
Paul Holmgren.
Flyer. And he did it all. Player,
Everything.
obviously.
Everything.
Coach.
Yep.
GM. President.
It's like when the awards people, they say they get an EGOT.
Yeah.
Right? You win the Emmy, the Grammy, the Oscar, and the Tony.
Yeah.
Paul Holmgren's
He's
got the EGOT of hockey.
He's an EGOT guy. I like that. Oh, man, this is awesome. It's the Flyers Alumni Charity Classic Weekend. We're at the Flyers Alumni Golf Outing here today. Beautiful DuPont Country Club. A little joint episode, Snow the Goalie and Flyers Daily. Bill Meltzer going to join us momentarily. Bundy's in the wings as well.
Yeah.
What have you thought kind of this offseason so far? You know, we saw Danny in his first offseason make a trade right at the beginning of the Cup final, the Provorov deal.
Yeah.
Is everything just kind of building up to what's going to be an insane week here? Let's get your reporter's cap on.
Yeah, no, I think it's going to be a very busy week for the Flyers. And I think it really kind of kicks in today and tomorrow, really. And I think that's when the hardcore discussions are going to happen. Look, would the Flyers like to move up from 6? Of course. Everybody would like to get as high as they can in the draft.
It's too expensive.
I just don't think it's going to happen, right? Because the price is too high. And even though the Flyers have assets, I don't think it's worth giving up the amount of assets that it would require to move up 2 spots for a very similar player.
Yeah.
I know
drop off's not going to be that pronounced.
Correct. And I think fans get a little bit caught up in that a little bit too much. Like, oh, this guy's ranked above this guy. In this draft, there's 1
Schaefer,
and then it's 2 through
8 is what Danny was saying.
Yeah. So you're pretty much looking at the same group of guys, right? So I think you have that. I think the Shabanov thing it looks like it's going to happen. I know that there's his new agency, Cortex, contacted everybody and said, not true. We haven't signed anything yet.
Which is true. He hasn't signed anything.
He has not. I think it's more posturing a little bit just because
last minute.
Hey, listen, there's 32 teams that this guy can sign with for free, right? And so let's just make it go around, see what's what. But I do think that the player wants to play in Philadelphia. So I think
that's the Mishkov factor.
Yeah, and that is the Mishkov factor.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to happen. And then it's going to be interesting to see because I don't think it's just the draft now. I think that they will try and move up from 22 if they can. If not, they might use those picks. And they might move some of those second rounders for other players or future. But I will say this. I think that free agency is going to get interesting too. I think that there's 1 or 2 things that could happen in free agency. Just hearing some things behind the scenes and knowing what's going on, I think that there's a real possibility that they're a little bit more active in free agency than maybe they originally were planning on being.
Okay. Well,
not super not chasing big names by any stretch of imagination, but a little bit more active.
Good, because there's not that many big names available in the
free
agency.
Correct.
That are going to do that. We've got reinforcements from Snow the Goalie, former Flyer NHL defenseman Chris Therien joins us, and Bill Meltzer in the house as well, representing Flyers Daily for the cage match.
I get to work with all the guys that I work with. I do Snow the Goalie. I do Flyers pregame with you and Brian. Me and Bill do a myriad of things together.
Yeah.
So this is
including
like
Hockey Hot Stove.
Like home for me. Yeah, Hockey Hot Stove. So this is very much home for me.
I read your draft story on Hockey Hot Stove.
Yeah.
Your draft day experience. I did not remember that rule was in place, that if you weren't taken in the first 3 rounds, you were going to go into the following year's draft.
The folling year, yeah.
It was a bizarre rule.
I have to find that rule, but I remember. I mean, I know it was real because I remember my agent kept telling me. He's like, it's got to be the first 3 rounds. And
are you wearing deodorant today, by the way? In that story, you said you weren't. You smelled like an oil.
I'm wearing Grey Poupon.
Excuse me, sir. Do you have any Grey Poupon?
Oh, that's awesome. So that was the deal, and I got picked the 47th, which was I think there was only 63 would have been the final pick. There's 21 teams then.
Yeah.
So that was that's how it worked out. Wow. Yeah, a lot of memories. That was a very deep draft. When you look at the first round, it was loaded. First round, so.
that draft actually produced more guys who played for the Flyers than any other draft in history. If you look through that draft, how many guys actually played for Philly at some point? Not just and how many guys in the first round played for
I think
Philly
it was like 8. I think we looked this up, right? I think 8 different players who were drafted in that first round.
It was crazy.
Played for the Flyers at some point in their career.
91, right?
Of the first 5 picks that year, 4 of those picks played for the Flyers. And
the
only one that didn't was Owen Nolan.
Yeah.
And they would have loved him here.
Yeah, they would have loved him.
He would have been a guy they would have loved in Philadelphia. Tremendous. When you look at this offseason so far, as a former player, you got a lot of pride in this organization.
Mm-hmm.
And you're a guy, you want to see this team and this city come back to life like it was when you were playing.
Yeah.
Pulling in the parking lot, they're out there tailgating on a warm day in the spring.
Yeah.
That was a rite of passage.
Mm-hmm.
Flyers are going to the playoffs, and they're going to go on a run. The direction and what's in front of us now for this offseason, all this. Some money becoming available, a lot of draft picks, a lot of subtraction over the last couple of years.
Yeah, there's a lot of work to be done, right? Because there's a lot of options now Danny has to work with. As I just heard Anthony talking about, there's a lot of draft picks. There's some free agents, that they probably could target. But it's going to be a busy off summer. I always tell people it's exciting for the Flyers to see what they can do from where they were last year. But there's a lot of teams trying to improve, right? Like everybody's trying to prove, and everybody seems to be wanting it. And it feels like more like they're in splash mode this year than I think I've ever seen before. And I think you're going to see some crazy offer sheets going out.
Yeah.
I don't think teams are going to be like they once were, where you once made an offer sheet to a team and then you were blackballed by the league for the rest of your duration as GM. And I don't see that happening anymore because I just think it's going to be an everyday part of doing business now in the NHL.
I think last year with St. Louis and Edmonton, that was a game changer.
Yeah.
Because now it's not going to be so taboo to send out an offer sheet. I mean, when the Flyers did that to Shea Weber, it made it very hard for Homer to do business because other GMs were angry. But I don't think that's the case anymore. I think that's going to be a legitimate part of how teams are going to try to get players.
100%. So I think when you look at Danny and what he's got in front of him, I think there's a lot of excitement. There's a lot of hope, and there's a lot of things that have to get done. But I think that they're certainly on the right path, and this Friday will be a kind of a benchmark in terms of how they get off the ground with another draft.
The one thing I will say about the RFAs, and this is just a unique thing going into next season. Unless you're getting a star quality player in an RFA, teams might still be a little bit reluctant to give up the first round pick next year because you have a player like Gavin McKenna who is considered a generational talent type player who's going to be available in that draft. And so when you're looking at it, say you got to weigh the option of, do I want to go get a guy who we think might be a second line winger?
Because you can't protect it.
Right. And give up that first round pick, knowing that there's still a chance that if things go sideways this year, we could end up in that lottery and be like the Islanders and jump up and get the first overall pick, and then you missed out on a McKenna.
Imagine now Flyers win the lottery. There's a generational player, and they don't have the pick.
Right. So that's the
Philadelphia's chance to be jumping off bridges.
I just think it's just because of the year. That doesn't mean that they wouldn't try it. I do think that Briere's a little bit of a gambler, and I think that he's the kind of guy that would go after an RFA. But I don't think it would be giving up that first round pick knowing McKenna's
specifically next year.
Plus, they're speculating they're going to be in a position to draft McKenna. Right?
But do you think that the teams that would be likely to be lottery teams with high enough odds where you would, I mean, it worked out for the Islanders this year, but the year before that, there was no movement at all. Everybody picked exactly where they
I will tell
finished.
you, I think there will be some RFA stuff happening, but I think it's teams who firmly believe that they're not going to be in the lottery.
Right.
And I think if you're a borderline team,
like St. Louis was last year.
Right. Like if you're a borderline team, you might be more reluctant because you have a McKenna. Or if you're a rebuilding team, you're probably not doing it because of the potential to get a McKenna. But if you're a Colorado or if you're a Florida or whatever, and you have the ability to do that, you're looking at it saying, yeah, well, we're going to be in the playoffs next year. Doesn't matter. We're not going to be in the McKenna lottery. Yeah, we'll go after an RFA. So I think you got to just consider the year when you're looking at the RFA situation.
Well, the other thing too is if you don't know, have your goalie situation solved before you do that,
right?
Because that's a major factor here. Is upgrading that position. What are you hearing on the goaltending front? It's been really, I said to Bill the other day,
very quiet.
It's been really quiet, which tells me something's happening.
Yeah, I think that they're going to do something. What they do, I don't know, but I think they're going to do something for a goalie. I mean, look, they have to, right? Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they draft another goalie too.
First round? You got 3 first-round picks?
I don't think so. I think it would be one of the early seconds.
Okay.
The name
they have to draft one. They didn't draft one last year.
Yeah, well, I know. And I think that the name that I keep hearing is this Frolov, Russian goalie. That they like. I think that's an early second round. I think it was Adam Kimmelman. I want to say it was Adam who asked the question at the press conference, and they asked Brent, "Do you have a first round grade on any goalies?" He said maybe one.
Ravensburger.
Well, he said maybe one.
Yeah.
Right. And so, if that's the case, I don't think that he's the guy that they like the most out of the goalies. Yeah. So it's like, yeah, go ahead. Somebody take that kid in the first round because we'll wait till the second round and draft a goalie. So I think they will draft one, but at the same time, obviously that's not going to solve their goaltending problem for 25-26 because that player's still 4 years away, right? That you're drafting. I think that they have to find a bridge of some kind to team up with Sam Ersson.
Yeah, you give you more than competent goaltending.
Yeah.
Funny, one of the big talking points has been size
of
late. You are a tall, big defenseman. In your day, there was a lot of guys big like you and could skate. The Flyers, on the blue line in particular, Sanheim's long, but he doesn't play a heavy game.
Right.
How important is that element? Like you just watched what the Florida Panthers did
They got a couple guys that play that kind of game.
Holy,
Forsling, Nico Mikola. They you know what they do? They take up space on the ice, right?
Yeah.
And that's what you can't, like when you're looking at a smaller guy or big defenseman. Sometimes that big defenseman may not be a guy who moves a puck with precision
That
every
doesn't have
single.
to be his job though.
But that's not his job. But he takes up space and defends the D zone and knocks down pucks. Gets stick on puck, finishes a check, plays tough in front of the net in the corners. That's kind of what I think this team is lacking in a lot of ways in terms of having.
That's not changed in the game.
That's never changed. It
never will.
Never will.
Interesting thing too, guys, and to bring this up to you, you would think, and I wrote an article about this on Friday, but you would think, a week out from the draft, they're going that last weekend before the draft, and let's get the scouts together, let's have our little last minute meetings, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Danny was in Miami, and he went down there, and he actually brought some scouts down and brought some other executives down there with him. And when you said, what's he doing in Miami? So the agent, Dan Milstein, runs a little pre-draft camp, usually mostly Russian players down in Miami. And they went down there for that. And I think that that's an interesting thing. And of course, the Shabanov news comes out while they're down there, right? There's a lot of agents down there as well. So you wonder if what's going on down there might be a predecessor for what's coming this weekend in the draft, and also obviously with the Shabanov thing that we already talked about, Jason.
Flyers' relations with Russia are in a good spot.
You know what? And it's kind of an interesting approach, right? And I like it because when you think back, the Detroit Red Wings did this back in the day, right? Now, granted, they had the luxury of going after the star players, in Russia. All right, it was a little bit different, okay, and back then because nobody in the NHL was touching Russian players,
to sneak them out,
right? And they had to sneak them out. There was just a whole other level of what you were doing with bringing Russians over. There's 32 teams who will have Russian players. There just is still a lot of reluctance for geopolitical reasons why teams don't go after Russian players. And I think that the Flyers look at it and say, hey, we're willing to take that gamble. We're willing because they're young players. We don't know if they're going to be stars or not, but we're willing to take that gamble and make those inroads because if in fact we hit on 2 or 3 of these, then when the time comes and you need to bring in a star Russian player, it's like, oh, they have a great relationship with Russian players in Philadelphia. Let's go there.
Yeah, and the Flyers also. I mean, a year ago they hired Oleg Znarok.
Yeah,
I mean he's a decorated KHL coach, really connected with the powers that be in the Russian Hockey Federation, the KHL, the political sphere. That was a under the radar, really big hiring for the Flyers. So if you guys remember a year ago, there was a picture of Michkov and Snarok and I think Fedotov was the other one. They were vacationing in Colorado. If you have to have it in within the system there, Snarok is already an insider. So that gives the Flyers a big benefit. They also have boots on the ground with Ken Hudakov too. And Hoodie has the advantage. He's a Canadian who relocated to Russia just for professional reasons. So that he's completely bilingual, that he's trusted on both sides of the Atlantic. That gives the Flyers an advantage that a lot of other teams don't have. And then you have the Michkov factor into that too, where guys are going to want to play with him. I think the Flyers have very quietly made significant inroads where other teams have not. So that is something absolutely to watch.
Russian players love playing with other Russian players because of the culture they can share here. You got to run?
I got to run. But you know what? I will say one thing. I remember I was at Eric Desjardins or Bob Clark said to me years ago, you can't have 10 Russians on your team.
Yeah.
You just can't. You can have a certain...
You can have a slight mix.
A mix of them, but you cannot overload your team.
Because it'll separate
100%. The language barrier.
Teams.
Right. And they end up becomes cliquish.
Yeah.
Because of the language at the beginning.
Yeah.
And then that just brings out a different relationship.
Yep.
So that's why I think it's great that they're getting their hands and priorities on some of these top Russian
How would
players.
Clarkie have said that? Put it on a tee for him. Let's see. You're first. You're on number 1 right now.
All I can say is you can't have too many Russians.
Buddy, last question for you before you roll.
Yeah.
How's the golf game?
Oh, not good. No, that's not good. If you don't play this game every day, the problem is I watch golf on Sundays sometimes, and I feel like that's my game.
Looks easy. It
feels like
easy.
that just seems so easy. That's not my game. No, but you know what? It's a scramble today. It's always a great day. I don't know why, and I think Bill or Brian or you guys can attest if you're here. Is it 100 degrees at this tournament every year?
Seems like it.
Feels
I mean,
like
I
it,
remember
yeah.
I feel like I'm drenched by 11:30, and then I just get I have no sweat left to give,
Yeah.
and I'm dry the rest of the day in
Yeah.
the 101 degree heat. So
Hit him
but
straight.
we're gonna have fun, and it's always a really great event. I got to get up for the team picture at 9:30, so that's why I got to roll.
Stay hydrated, and Bundy, best of luck this weekend. I know it's a big day. You're not going to be at the draft because your daughter's getting married on Friday.
Yeah.
So congratulations. Have a great time, man.
Yeah, thanks, guys, and I'll be missing all of you. I know you guys are all doing something for that Friday night, and like I said, if I can call in, Ant, I'll try to
We'll make it
dial in
happen.
from
Yeah,
with my tux on and give you a couple minutes of time after the Flyers make their first pick.
Sounds good.
All
Sounds
right,
good.
guys. Thanks,
There he
guys.
is.
Have a great week.
Former Flyer defenseman, broadcaster. He's done it all as well. Chris Therien. Let's do that Russian thing real quick. Bill and I spoke about this on Flyers Daily. That when you look at the Russian connection, they like celebrating their culture together. We see, when they go on the road, Russian players get together. So do all roads, Ant, lead next offseason to Kirill Kaprizov being a Flyer?
Well, that's an interesting name, right? I mean, there's so many big names that are going to be available next year, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Eichel will not be. He'll extend in big.
you assume he will, but I mean, right now he's one of the free agents. There's the whole McDavid thing that everybody's talking about, like what the hell's going to happen there, right? And then you got Makar is another big name that's out there next year. So there's going to be so many big names out there next year. But the one that might make the most sense is Kaprizov because it kind of fits what the Flyers are trying to do. So it's interesting. The one thing I will say is there is this one kind of notion in Russia, and I don't agree with it, right? But they have this thing like, well, let's look at the coach, and have Russian players had success with this coach before? And it's like, well, what does that mean? Like, what does that, like, I don't
They're only
get
coming
that.
if they can have success.
Right, well, I understand that, but why does the coach matter so much? Like, one of the things that I know that is kind of out there, this tied with this whole Shabanov thing, is, there's a belief in there, well, guys like Kuzmenko and Mikheyev, they didn't do real well in Vancouver with Rick Tocchet. And I look at it and say, well, Kuzmenko's played for what, 5 coaches in the NHL now?
Yeah, 3 years.
In 3 years? Like, I mean, is it the coach or is it the player? Right? Like, I mean, so you gotta take it with a grain of salt sometimes. Like, it would be different if you were talking about a star quality player who didn't succeed with one coach and then succeeded with another.
Yeah.
But if you're talking about guys who are journeymen who bounce around from one team to the next, I don't know why that should be a factor.
Yeah. Well, you look at it, you need a bigger sample size.
For sure.
You just can't do it on if you have a guy that's played for a couple coaches, been, had pretty good success, and then he plays for these 2 other coaches, and those 2 other coaches don't have success with other Russian players.
Correct.
Then you can start to put that together. But I think they have every kind of diverted motivation for these players coming over from there.
Yeah.
But look, the Flyers' relations are good with the Russian players right now, and that's a good thing. It's another avenue to help build this team. Bill, we're here at draft week. Going to be a lot going on. Ann was just saying, the draft's going to be, you got all these picks and everything. There'll be some action, but there could be more action in free agency.
No, for sure. Both unrestricted and restricted free agents. We were just talking before about offer sheet possibilities. So you want to be able to stock up on as many picks as you have too, because we were talking about the compensation side of it. And teams quite often price to the dollar, staying at one compensation level, whereas $1 more would entail with the first round pick.
Tier.
Yeah, you tier up. So you see a team that might be vulnerable to, you could do it $1 down, but they still can't match it. I think teams are becoming much more savvy on that, and I think that the Flyers have to be a team that's at the forefront of that, because you have to find different ways to get better. When you look at everybody's chasing Florida, right? How were the Panthers built? Now, obviously, Barkov, high first round pick. Ekblad was the first pick of the draft, but a lot of that team was built through trades, through free agency, and through waiver pickups. The really smart waiver pickups. Verhaeghe was a waivers guy. Forsling was another waiver guy. If you can look for guys any number of ways that can help your team, and you're bold. I mean, that's what Bill Zito has done really, really well. When he sees a guy he wants, he goes for whatever it takes, because that to make that Kachuk trade to outbid the league, he had to give him talent in there. He had to give Uyghur, he had to
Huber
give
was coming up
Huberdeau.
a Hart finalist season, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's gutsy.
Yeah.
To give up a guy like
Sure.
that.
I mean,
Changed everything.
and it worked out. But I do think that the difference is when you say you're chasing you're chasing Florida, like you're trying to do what they're doing, where they were the time Bill Zito got there is a lot different than where.
Well,
because here's the thing, Bill.
They had a nucleus, right?
You had a number one center,
right?
And you had a number one defenseman,
correct?
And you had a number one goalie.
Yeah,
even though he didn't play like one right away.
But, I was going to say it took a while. They thought for a while maybe Spencer Knight was going to be their number one goalie.
That's why they drafted him right after they signed Bob, which made no sense.
Right, but they had those three key elements in place, which I think makes it easier for a guy like Bill Zito to go out and do the things that you just talked about. If you don't have those three things in place,
he had the hard things in place.
Yeah, it's hard.
And got the other.
Not so much the waiver guys though, because like anybody could have had Verhaeghe, anybody could have had Forsling.
Yeah,
right. They were out there, and that's really what he specialized in, because when he was an agent, I mean he made his mark. A lot of times with Finnish players. But his first clients were also Tim Thomas was his first client, undrafted.
Yeah.
Right. Billy Leno, one of his clients, late round pick. He parlayed into a lot of money with Buffalo. So on and so forth.
He trusted his eye.
Brian Rafalski was another one of his early clients, undrafted. So he kind of had a GM or a scout's eye for talent. I think that those under the radar guys, and they might just be a 5% guy, but when a guy's a track record repeatedly finding these under the radar guys, you have to get better at it.
No doubt. Well, one of those under the radar guys, well, he wasn't an under the radar guy. He actually played the most games with any team in Philadelphia, a total of 338. He is a veteran of the NHL, 16 years. Is Mike Kenubal joining us here? Mike, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Doing awesome.
Doing great.
Yeah, it's funny you're talking about Bill Zito. I remember they flash back, and then he started listing off his clients, or his initial clients. I remember when I was coming out of college, and back in the day, now you can have player reps. You kind of have people lined up, and back in the day, you had to pick them, and he was one of my finalists. He was new to the business.
Right.
Really? It's funny. I had to think back, and then when you guys said that, kind of made me realize that, because they dropped in Brian Rafalski and Tim Thomas, guys my age, who were coming out of college right about then. And I remember he was trying to get, I think he was Chicago-based at the time, and he was trying to get in the business. That's funny. Funny how it works out.
First-time GM. A lot of people here are worried, Flyer fans. Oh, Danny's a first-time GM. That's one of the things to worry about. Bill Zito, first-time GM, made some really big decisions down there in Florida, coming out. He was an assistant GM in Columbus prior, under Jarmo Kekalainen. And, what do you think of the job that Danny's got in front of him, first of all? And you know him well. You played with him. He went to Penn after to learn the business side, learned what he didn't know. What do you think about Danny in this build-up phase?
Yeah, we live in Michigan, so I'm kind of wise to we see a lot of the Red Wings, and I worked a little bit with them and Steve Yzerman trying to right these ships again, and it's a daunting task. It's hard, and it's you have to have certain parts come in at the right time and find some cornerstone players, and it's difficult. And they preach patience and all that, and it's hard, and fans don't want to hear that. They want to, everybody wants a winner right now. And, so it's an uphill climb for sure. And it's a combination of guys you can draft and then adding what you can add. And then as I walked in, you were talking about Florida pulling guys off waivers and getting lucky with a few guys like that. And having great goaltending to start, right? And we all saw that come to fruition in the finals with Florida and Edmonton, who had more solid goaltending, and certainly became evident as the series progressed. So, it's daunting. It's hard. I think it's a very, very difficult task.
Got to be damn near perfect now.
Yeah, especially with the salary cap. I mean, that's what makes it harder. I mean, you remember back in your day, it was like if a team made a mistake, it was like, we'll just buy out our mistake.
Absolutely.
We'll pay for our mistake, and we'll fix it that way.
Yeah,
you can't do that now.
You paid for it financially back in the day with no cap, and you had to eat the contract. And now it's like you paid for it with that roster spot, and it's a weight on the back of your team that you just can't get rid of, right? And so, and you got to find a willing trading partner too.
Yeah.
You got to find somebody who's really kind of to exchange the same thing, or how creative you want to get. But again, the dollars aren't infinite. The dollars are finite, and you've got to make it all fit together in the jigsaw puzzle. And it's quite the task.
No, I think the other piece of that puzzle is that where you're, I think when you're team building, I mean, a great example was you coming to Philly, right? The Flyers needed a guy who could play in the corners, play down low, go to the net, and you were able to play with Peter Forsberg and Simone Gagne, but your role in that line was to really help create space and win pucks for those guys. Had that in Boston too, and I think where you're looking for guys that fit, I think where you're trying to build a roster and build lines, you really as much of it is about matching who might be able to play with who.
Yeah, and it is. It's like not always you don't just put your best 3 players together and then your next second line is 4, 5, 6, and there you like to, that's why coaches. I know people got upset with John Tortorella. Was like it felt like it was different lines every day, right? Yeah. So you're looking for these combinations. You might see it a little bit in practice. You might get them together at the end of one game, and you're like, okay, I want to see if this has any legs. And lines get stale too, right? They'll go for 2 weeks and go well, and then you might have to tweak them. But that's why coaches are trying combinations all the time. They try and start in training camp, and they think on paper this looks good, and then they get a week or 2 in, and you're like, I don't really like this. It's not going the way I thought it was going to go, and so it's certainly demanding. And you hope the players can create their own identities. I was very fortunate I could kind of create that identity that you become dependable on that, And sometimes younger players come in and I'm just going to go play hockey, but you've got to career manage a little bit, and you have to figure out what am I going to bring that's a little different than somebody else.
Sure.
And it's not always about scoring, and it's not always about goals and assists. It's being dependable, being healthy. Can I provide a physical presence every night? Can I be great in my battles? What now with the analytics, the reports they get, like how am I going to stand out on these analytics? Like what's going to jump out? And that's what players kind of have to figure out a little bit.
Mike, where are you on the ever increasing reliance on analytics? I know with coaches, there are certain analytics that they want, and a lot of it they consider just noise. Mm-hmm. Are there particular ones you find useful, or other ones that you find not so important?
It's interesting because I had this exact same conversation with John Stevens, right? He's coaching in Vegas, and he was here for the weekend. They're taking off. They're going to watch your son play in the American League Finals here. But we got to that subject too, and talking about, and he's like, you just get so much information and the analytics. And then he brought up a story to me, and this is probably primitive analytics, but he said, you're not playing as well. And he said, I looked, you had 7 seconds of puck touch time in the offensive zone. Right. You only had the puck for 7 seconds, let's get that number up. And then he said, check the next couple games and you're up in 40 seconds. And you started to play a lot better, so
analytics with the ICs.
Yeah. And so that's one where you could use it as for a player. But Johnny went into a thing where he can see it kind of a trend with his team. When we do well, we typically have these numbers. And then when we're not doing well, these numbers are low, or this one's way too high. So I think over time they get kind of where when our team's playing good, no matter how many metrics you're using, you kind of find where they all slot in. But as a coach, I mean, I think some of my personal things would be ice time. Obviously, you want to know exactly what somebody's doing. Certain guys in my lineup want to make sure they have a hit, or you're moving these things. So you get these reports, and as a player, it's horrible when you have zeros all there, right? Yeah. You want numbers there. You want some sort of number, but keep moving those meters. And
except for a -3.
Again, yeah, right, except for without a minus. Anything in the positive, right? But it's like, whether it's takeaways, hits, controlled exits, however detailed you want to go. But his point was that we know we have a cache, if you want to call them, a bunch of metrics, and it's like, if they trend in these numbers, our team is typically playing well. So I think you find that as a coach, what your team characteristics might look like on those analytics.
Mike Cole had a really nice season at Notre Dame. This year.
Ken had a pretty good year too.
Yeah. I'm a national champion.
Not bad. What do you? I mean, obviously, you're going to be biased. It's your kid, right? But what are you thinking about how he's progressing? I know Danny's talked to us a little bit about saying that hey, he's coming along real nicely. I just want to get Dad's perspective.
Dad's perspective is always a little tainted, right? But I think I think in this game, a lot of dads are hard on. They're very hard. Like there's not rose-colored glasses in our house by any means. We've had lots of conversations through the years about the reality of what things look like and how they are, how you might think they are, and this is how they really are probably. But we're super proud of both boys. First of all, you touched on Cole. Obviously, he's the one, people that know here, a draft pick here. And their team, he had a very nice year. Had a couple of injuries, but still was very consistent. I think he's always been a very consistent player. And then they've had a big transition. So this is a year, Jeff Jackson, who is their coach there, is stepping down. The team didn't do great last year. Brock Sheehan was anointed about a year ago this time to come in. And so it's a new generation's new era kind of. So he's very excited about that. Other big news, you get out of the dorms and now you're in an apartment. That's huge news. That's much more better living. But he'll be out here in a week for that development camp. And again, like as long as, we see it, he sees it, his Notre Dame staff sees it, the Flyer staff see it, the constant improvement.
The arc of getting better.
You're just getting better. Yeah. You're going to get bigger, stronger. You're lifting in college. Like college lifting is like hardcore lifting, the eating and the lifting. And then
they don't play as many games.
No. Yeah. And so there's a point you don't want to get too heavy and stuff, but stronger, like get that old man, like core strength going and just get better and stronger. So he'll be out here in a week. And then, I'm anticipating a good year out of him this year, and then we'll see. And then, lucky Cam, our oldest kid, won a national title this year at Western Michigan.
Right.
So that was a lot of fun to chase that around, for a little bit.
You get to go chase the white ball around. Hopefully you don't have to chase it too much.
Yeah.
And no stitches today, like when you came in for the alumni.
Get set for a CT scan on your face, break your cheekbone. Exactly.
Mike, thanks for doing this.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate you.
There he is, Mike Kenubal, joining us on our joint episode, Flyers Daily, Snow the Goalie, extending the olive branch between the two podcasts. We have our next guest is here now, and he's a guy that you look at and you go, man, could have played the game in any era,
including this current era,
including this one now. And I'm going to turn the first question over because it's his favorite player of all time to Mr. Bill Meltzer to start our interview with Mark Howe. Bill?
I think my biggest question, and I've asked you this before in pieces, but to make the transition at age 25 from being a winger to a full-time defenseman, what was involved in that? Because there's not a lot of guys who can do that successfully.
There was a lot of mistakes involved in it, I'll tell you that. So, but the one thing was I could skate really well. So, but the problem was I was making mistakes, but I could make up for most of the mistakes. What helped me a ton was when I got traded to the Flyers. I'd only played defense for maybe about a year and a half when I came here. And being on the ice with Eddie Van Imp. Actually, I was telling some guys yesterday some of the nuances of the game that Eddie had to play with, and because he didn't have maybe some of the abilities that I had. So I took his concept of positioning, playing, where to be, reading your opponent's various things, and you'd work on that every day in practice. And also I had a great partner to start with in Glenn Cochran. Then I went to Brad McCrim, Michelle Samuelson. So where I was very fortunate playing with all three of those guys, we had tremendous chemistry. So and it's never you alone. That's why I call it a pairing.
Yeah.
So and just playing in the Flyers system, I think helped me a lot. But and a lot of it was back when the games used to be on Prism. So I'd sit and maybe have a beer or so after a game, bite to eat, and I go home and the games were replayed at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. And it's before they really did much video stuff. And I always tried to play a perfect game. When I say perfect, I meant like perfect defensively. Offense, sometimes it happened, sometimes it didn't. And usually if I made a mistake, I was hoping it was in the first period, because if it was in the third period, I'd be up to 3:34 in the morning watching the replay just so I could see the mistake that I made. And we all make mistakes, but what makes you better is you learn from those mistakes, and they become far less frequent and hopefully totally out of your game.
Mark, you mentioned that, and that's fascinating to me. I didn't realize that you were watching the replays on Prism. Do you think you were unique in that way, or were a lot of guys going back and watching the game after you guys just played it back then?
Depends how much they had to drink in.
Yeah.
I know. It gave me a reason to stay out till 1 till the game's replay.
Yeah.
But no, I think most guys that had played defense, just played defense, and they knew the game better than I did. And so a lot of what I had to, especially when I was in Hartford, I never had anybody teach me. So it's you're thrusted into this position, which I totally embrace. I loved it because I went from playing 23 minutes a night to 30 plus minutes a night, and so you don't have time to think on the bench. You just get your breath, you go. And but yeah, but I had to improve somehow. And usually, my dad used to bring me to a lot of the Red Wing games, and he said, keep your eyes and your ears open. You're going to learn a lot. And so that's basically what I did.
Being a Howe, having that name on the back of your jersey, it came with some pressure, I'm sure, considering who your father was. How did Dad react to you going from being a forward to a D?
Often, like if I speak to kids about playing hockey and I talk to the parents, and I say, what do you think Gordie Howe used to teach me about hockey? What do you used to tell me? And all these people come up with all these answers, and I said 0.
Yeah.
So,
you didn't have those conversations.
We were brought up, and if every once in a while you get caught with your head down, you get run over. And when I was a kid, and you walk in, you see Dad after the game if he was there and he could attend, and he just sit and smile and laugh at you. And that was his way of saying, "Did you learn your lesson?"
Yeah.
And so, and
Didn't
what
need
I
words.
really appreciate is both my parents are wonderful, but they let us learn life lessons on our own, and it wasn't
That's
preached.
incredible.
And
Great.
but the door was always open to ask questions. So, and the only pressure I think that I ever felt was pressure you put on yourself.
Yeah.
And I know when we first went to the WHA, and I was an 18-year-old kid. And I was never much for reading newspapers, and because I kind of judged myself for what I wanted to be. But there was a couple articles I read, and they said, well, this is kind of a thing and a gimmicky thing. And my job was to prove that I belong in the league. So, and I won Rookie of the Year. We had a great team. The team won the championship. So that's what was important.
All the way to the
me.
Hall of Fame.
Well, somehow we
You
got
had something
there,
to prove.
but-
You had something to prove.
Obviously, he coached here as well, and he was good friends with your dad. But how much of an influence is Bill Dineen?
Oh, Billy, I love Billy. So he was my coach in Houston. Coached me a little bit in Hartford, and then I had him here. And he was I only played for 2 guys that I really consider player coaches, and Bill Dineen was the obvious one. I think Paul Holmgren was another. But I had a lot of respect for both men. That's what carries the weight when you're a player's coach. But when I came in and initially when I signed my contract, I really didn't think I was ready. And it was probably more confidence and emotional, being 17 at the time when I was signing. And actually, I wanted to go back to junior one more year, but I was getting paid $125,000. My dad had never made more than $100,000 a year. I've never played a game, and Dad said, "Well, break your arm and sign it for you." So when I came in, my brother Marty was a year older. He was more prepared, I think, mentally. I think he adjusted to the pro game quicker. Bill Dineen was wonderful for me because he made me earn my stripes, because I was used to always playing power plays, used to penalty killing, all these things. But we had a lot of good veteran players down in Houston. And I think it was probably around maybe around mid-November, he started dabbling me into the penalty kill a little bit. And by the time we hit maybe December, January, I started getting a little bit of power play ice time. So he made me earn my stripes. But by then, now I felt comfortable in the league. And so then I could be a positive for the team rather than just a kid out there trying to make his way.
Howie, you're at the building watching games all the time. You're still around it. I see your kind of influence on today's game a ton in NHL defensemen. Very under control, economic with your energy to be able to play that amount of minutes. You know, guys that can defend and attack as well. When you see a lot of the defensemen around the league today, some of those guys like a Quinn Hughes or, McCarr, those kind of guys, they put a very similar style to you. What does that make you feel? Doing that back when you played wasn't very prevalent.
No, but there was, obviously there was a few guys. Bobby Orr obviously being by far the best. I think where I was maybe a little bit different, 'cause a lot of people, their impression of me was you're an offensive defenseman. And I said, no, I was not.
That was not your job.
Yeah.
I was a defensive defenseman who knew how to create offense. And I learned how to play the clock. That's another thing Eddie taught me. And hey, you're up 2 goals. You're going in the third period. I don't need another one down there. I got to make sure it does go in this end here. So then your mind switches to you make the simple plays. If you're down a goal, 10 minutes to go, 5 minutes to go, yeah, now you have to risk and take chances a little bit. But no, I think all the athletes are in better shape. The coaching, the style of play is so much better. And you go back 30, 40 years ago, and you always gave a report, so this guy can't turn well, this guy's not a great skater. You can't say that anymore. So, and most guys' puck skills are really good, but I think there's a few guys that were better than me offensively. I think maybe I was a little better defensively just because I focused a little bit more on my defense.
Like a plus 82 to 1 year.
Plus 85.
85. I mean, come on.
Get it right, Jason.
Yeah.
I had a great partner, and well, you have to have a lot of luck.
Talk about that with Brad McCrimmon, the chemistry. Like you knew where he was, he knew where you are all the time.
Yeah, and I can say that even playing with Glenn Cochran and Shel Sanderson. Shel, we had to work together for a couple weeks. We worked out a few kinks, but even with Glenn, and then Glenn would always say, "Look, I'll have you covered if you're stuck in the offensive zone." I would say, "I'm never going to be stuck in the offensive zone. By the time the play gets to the red line, I'm going to be back. You stay on your side, I'll be on my side. You do your job, I'll do my job. I mean, if I'm not doing my job, call me out." So we just work really well together. But with Brad, and Brad was easily my best friend from hockey. And I think in a lifetime, if you have 5, I call them Al Collings. If you have 5 Al Collings on your side, and he was one of my 5 guys. So when Brad died in a plane crash, it was pretty tough to take. But what a wonderful human being. And and a prime example is there was a couple games where, say, you have a 2-on-2 coming down the ice. I tripped on the ice, fell, went on my keister. They go down 2-on-1, they score. You get to the bench, and I'm trying to apologize for falling down. He said, "I'm sorry, I should have had your back." And that's kind of how he was as a teammate, and he was everywhere he played. So he was a great teammate for everybody that he played with.
Wow. Well, the call to carts is coming. They're calling you to the carts. You going to hit them straight?
No, I play once a year here. Except last year I went up to Smithers and played at Joe Watson's tournament. So my only goal, I don't play golf. I just try to hit that little ball, beat the hell out of it.
Chase
it. Chase it around. It's simple strategy.
Yeah. Best of luck today. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks, Mark.
Okay, guys, thanks.
There he is, Mark Howe. Just unbelievable career. Bill, you watch defensemen balance on their skates is everything against the rush, and the way he skated so under control was incredible.
Yeah, no, he could, outside of maybe Paul Coffey, best skating defenseman I ever saw.
Yeah,
he just so hockey smart. I mean, Mark is just modest to a fault, but he said that he made a lot of mistakes and had a lot to learn becoming a defenseman. He was in Norris Finals his first year as a defenseman.
Yeah.
So,
it's remarkable.
It's fascinating stuff.
Yeah, and he must have felt 8 feet tall playing with Glenn Cochran.
Yeah. Well, like Howie's told me the story that when first camped together, I think Bob McCammon was coaching at that point, and he said that Cocker came over, put this giant paw on his shoulder, and he said, "No one's going to touch you." And he said he felt 10 feet tall because no one did.
Yeah.
He had all kinds of room.
So much protection when you have a guy like that. One guy we haven't really talked about a lot today, and he's here today, is Rick Tocchet.
Yeah.
And the influence of Rick Tocchet on this team. And one thing I've talked about quite a bit on Flyers Daily is with certain players, getting through them. A guy like Owen Tippett is a guy like Cam York's another guy I'm really intrigued to see how they play under Rick Tocchet, because I don't think the message is going to be a lot different than it was from John Tortorella, but it's coming from a different set of lips, a different perspective, and maybe a slightly softer touch, but not a soft touch.
Correct. And I think that in all honesty, Jay, it's one of the reasons why, I mean, if you live on Twitter, my God, you see so many different, they should do this, they should do that, they should trade this guy, they should trade that guy. One of the reasons they're not going to even think about moving an Owen Tippett is they want him to play under Rick Tocchet.
Yeah. He's got every tool in the bag.
They do think that they think he can unlock what wasn't there last year, and they think I think they believe it's more of a motivational thing, that maybe he was beaten down a little bit by Tortorella, and that even though Tocchet will still have that accountability, that he'll be able to communicate it better, and that
more effectively to get a positive result.
Yes, and I think that that's what's going to happen with, or they think was going to happen with Owen Tippett. Cam York's probably the same. I haven't really had that discussion with people within the organization, but I feel like you're right about that. That would be another guy who probably can take that next step with a coach that's more, giving to him.
Mm-hmm. And he's talked to Quinn Hughes about him.
Oh, of course. Right. Quinn Hughes loves talking, right?
Yeah.
So, and that was why, at his, if we go back to his introductory press conference, like the question that I asked him had to do with that very much. Like, you played in an era where coaches beat down on their players.
He played for Mike Keenan.
He played for Mike Keenan, for God's sake, right? Like, so like that was, as a player, that's what he was used to. How do you then now as a coach adjust to today's generation where that doesn't work? And he talked a lot about that, right? About how it says, listen, I don't know everything. I'm going to rely on, my group. And he says, you just got to give them explanations. He says, so I'm going to talk to my group. Then I'm going to go to the players and say, this is what we're going to ask you to do, but let me tell you why we're going to ask you to do it. It's not just going to be go out there and do it because I said so.
Yeah.
And I think that
Partnership.
and I think today's athlete responds to that, right?
Yeah.
And so he gets it. He gets that. And I think that the Flyers are very hopeful that those players, and maybe even others, but at least those two, are certainly going to be unlocked even further by being with Rick Tocchet.
We've all had, different kinds of teachers over the course of our lifetimes. One thing that's such a big part of hockey today is using video as a teaching tool.
Yeah.
I know this firsthand because I've heard from some players. Torts is very hockey smart, and he had a really bright staff around him. But a lot of the guys dreaded video sessions because they felt hammered on. You didn't want to be in those clips, and it wasn't so much we need to get better. It's this guy is screwing up and he needs to get better.
Right.
And they felt embarrassed in front of the group.
Singled out.
Talk doesn't do it that way. Talk does video differently. He brought Dylan Crawford with him along from Vancouver. Nothing against Adam Patterson whatsoever, because Adam Patterson did a heck of a job for a lot of years directing the video end, but it's just that relationship that exists between Talk and between Dylan, and I think that'll be one of the first differences the players notice is in video sessions. Dylan is just as thorough as Adam was, but it'll be more constructive and I think a little more democratic in how clips show up too. I know if Torts were sitting here, you'd say, well, we would point out positive stuff too. Guys noticed who kept ending up in the negative clips and who was rarely, even if he was improving, was ending up in, they knew who was in the good graces and who wasn't.
Right.
Just for who was in the videos.
Yeah, and that can wear on a player.
Yeah.
It really can. It can erode confidence. I look at
you look over your shoulder.
Yeah. I look at Tippett, and to me, we know how kind of understated he is and almost shy. He just doesn't have any clue how good he is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When he's confident, he's very experimental and creative on the ice and just plays instinctually. Got to get him in that headspace more because he's got, a power forward that's got that speed, can skate like that. Not many guys exist like that.
Yeah.
He's a guy to me that, he's got to be a 30, 35 goal scorer.
Well, it's a big season for him.
No, critical season.
Like very, very much so.
Yeah.
And part of it's because of the contract.
Yeah. And you're willing to kind of say, because at this point, obviously, like you're looking at that, if you're a fan and you're looking at that contract, you're like, oh, that might be a bad contract. And it very well might end up being that. Who knows? But I think this is the year that you have to make that determination. Like say, okay, give him one more shot with another coach. Maybe he breaks out and then and you look at it and go, oh, maybe a year from now you're sitting there saying, Flyers got a great contract.
Oh, no, for sure. This should not be a 28 goal guy. I know he had 20 this year, but he also had the injury that I think really affected him down the stretch. But you look at his skill set. You look at a guy who has these stretches of 9 games where he has 7 goals, and you think this guy should be at least a 35 goal scorer. He has every tool in the book, and to not have those stretches where he goes 15 games with 1.
Right.
That's in him to do that. So hopefully Rick Tocchet can be the guy that, everybody's going to have his ups and his downs during the season, and all goal scorers are a little bit streaky, but some of the down stretches make them a little bit shorter, and the rest of that could take over, his abilities.
It's Flyers Daily and Snow the Goalie, a joint episode. We just had Mark Howe on it, and thinking about the blue line, he was kind of that anchor of the blue line for the Flyers for so many years.
Yeah.
This blue line right now, Travis Sanheim playing on the right side, top pair as a left shot. Cam York was with him for a lot of that. You still have Rasmus Ristolainen here. He's dealt with injuries. Can he make it through an entire season is a question. You have Emil Andre trying to break through. Zamula, is he a 7? You look at Jamie Drysdale, I thought towards the last third of the season really took a big, very important step.
Mm-hmm.
Sealer's still here. He's going to be that guy that's going to be an emotional leader for you. How does this blue line play out over the next year, 2 years?
It's a great question. I thought
pivotal.
I thought they were better than I expected this past year.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, really? They kind of surprised me at how good they were, because I looked at it at the beginning of last year and said, yeah, that blue line's not ready. It's not. And in a lot of ways, I thought it was the strength of their team.
Yeah.
This past season. I think it's still a little small overall. I'm not sure you can go York, Andre, Drysdale.
Half your defense right there
As 3 of your regular guys.
Yeah.
I think when you say over the next year or so, I do think somebody's got to go at some point in some capacity.
But he's got to go.
Right?
He's got to go.
You got to use that one of those guys as an asset to improve yourself somewhere else, whatever the case might be.
Maybe use it for a left wing or in a center package.
Sure, of course. But I also don't think that it's an awful group. Like I like the group in general. Do I think that they need a number 1 defenseman? I do, because I don't think Sanheim is a true 1D. I think he's more
for
of
a whole year.
For a whole year.
Yeah.
Like he could fill into that role, but he's more of a 2. Probably best suited as a 3 ultimately, but he could play as your number 2 for sure. And you got to be excited about some of the things that the young guys do. And we saw Andre a lot. Like, what he's got a lot of chemo in him if he can figure it out, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he's got that in him.
Grans came up, looked good.
I think Grans is going to be a guy that's going to push for a spot.
I do too.
I do too.
I really do.
Right-handed shot, and Ristolainen, and probably going to miss the start of the season.
Yeah.
So there's great opportunity.
Yeah,
he didn't look out of place at all when he was called up.
No, it was only 2-3 games, whatever it was, but he looked really good in each of them. So I think he's going to be.
Is he going to push for a spot?
I don't think he pushes for a spot to start the year. I think so. Yeah, but again, there's excitement there as well, and I think that they're going to take a defenseman at some point in this draft too, and it might even be in one of the first round picks. I think they might go after.
There's there's a whole group of defensemen. There's guys you might trade up for.
Yeah.
You look in the late first round. I look at the London Knights just because. A, the relationship there, but B, they are the gold standard in junior hockey right now. There's a guy who was Bonk's partner for a portion of the season. That he's supposed to go right around the end of the first round, and then maybe they're in a sweet spot. A different kind of defenseman, like a physical kind of defenseman, a little bit of a throwback guy.
Yeah.
Then that might be where and I know that if he's the pick, there'll be people balking and saying, well, why don't you go for a higher offensive upside? But you really, to me, it's all about a blend and a mix of players with different abilities. And I agree with you that I wouldn't be surprised at all if they use one of the first round picks on the D.
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
And how much turnover is there this year? And you always say there's always 2 to 4.
Yeah.
Where are those 2 to 4? Where are they?
Well, I think 2 centers. I think might be different. I think you might see 1 winger and 1 defenseman. And
obviously, Frost isn't here, so
and a goalie. So maybe 5.
Yeah.
Maybe 5 players.
It's a pretty good amount of turnover. So.
It's a lot of turnover, right? It's a lot of turnover.
Yeah, no question about it.
Sure, but that's what I think. I mean, ultimately, I think that's what. And when I say turnover, it doesn't mean that that's 5 players that they're going to trade for or sign in free agency. There could be some internal changes as well.
Sure.
But I do think that you're probably looking at 5 different positions, 5 different players on the roster than maybe that were on there last year.
Bill, you and I talked about it on Flyers Daily for Monday. Let's have the draft conversation.
Yeah.
Brad Marsh's going to join us very shortly. He puts all this together for the Flyers alumni and does a great job. Draft is coming up on Friday. We've been ticking down the days frankly, it's one of the most painful parts of not being a playoff team is 2 months plus of draft is coming, you're drafting high. Here's who you have to take, the absolutes and all that. And we're really what is a crapshoot when you're drafted in the NHL. They have kids. A lot of these kids aren't even shaving.
Yeah.
Friday, you expect what?
Friday, I expect the Flyers to pick 6th. I don't think they're moving up, and
not moving down either.
And unless they still think there's one of the centers that they like particularly, I think they hold the pick where they have it after Talk's introductory press conference. We had the breakout sessions, and I specifically asked Jonesy, and I don't know if I get an answer or not. Do you think you're going to stay at 6 or maybe move in there, given the number of picks that they had? He said, we like where we're at. Unless you could get the first pick, which would be Schaefer. They think for different reasons, the group of forwards that'll go in that next group, they're fairly comparable, but for different reasons, different playing styles. So he kind of thought they ultimately will stay at 6, and I don't think there's going to be every year there's always noise about teams open for business in the top 4 or top 5 picks. You hear San Jose this year, the second pick might be on the move. So I think the Flyers pick 6th. Now, if Martone is still on the board, that might be a game changer because that's a guy who could be a first-line winger with size. I think if all things are ideal, they're going with the center, and they might still be able to go. They still might go with the center anyway. And we did this exercise on Flyers Daily, where who will be off the board, so who might be there to take, and without going through the whole exercise again, I think the guys who might be there to take, because I think that Denye will be off the board. Certainly Misa will be off the board, maybe even as soon as 2nd. I think the guys you're looking at are O'Brien. I think O'Brien will be there. I think that Brady Martin will be there. And there's a possibility as well where I don't see the Flyers grabbing McQueen, even though everybody likes the tools there. So I think one of those guys, and of course we keep hearing Hagens, and there was the report in the Inquirer that Hagens was brought in to Voorhees, and that was kind of an eye opener because they did that with Michkov a couple of years ago to actually bring a guy to the training facility, and that's the guy who went into this year as the consensus first overall candidate. It might be too tempting if he's there at 6 to bypass him. Now the only downside in that is that we know that Jet Luchenko was not the biggest guy. He's kind of on the smaller side of average, and Hagens is on the smaller, actually small. He's smaller than Luchenko, so he's significantly smaller than average. But the skill set is hard to ignore, and really I think he was a victim of expectations that were too high this year. He went into this year, everybody expected him to just dominate college hockey right away, which is hard. College hockey is pretty tough.
As an 18-year-old, too.
And Mike Kenubal was just talking about how physically well-developed these guys are. They lift for real. That's why so many guys in collegiate hockey are physically ahead of the junior guys.
His son, Cam Kenubal, is 24.
Yeah. And so you're playing against guys that are in their 20s or 22 or whatever. And so there's definitely a preference for bigger centermen, whereas Hagens is a smaller guy. There might be a thought in there that Hagens and Luchenko is too small down the middle for your 1 and your 2 for the future. On the flip side, you go back to something that Jerry Melnick, the legendary late Jerry Melnick, used to always tell the Flyers scouts. He said, in the end of the day, you can look at this and at that. At the end of the day, there's no substitute for talent. You're talking about a guy with phenomenal talent who might be there at 6. So that would be the third guy in the mix, and really curious as to because that'd be a guy if you bypass him, you could kick yourself for, but you could make the case for O'Brien, who's taller and just as good of a playmaker, and you could make the case too for Martin as that heart and soul kind of Mike Richards type.
I want to say that I think that the whole bring Hagens thing in
It's a smokescreen.
is a distraction.
Yeah.
And I think it's a
we talked about that too.
And I think it's a distraction because of what they did with Mishkov.
Yeah, right.
Right. I
So
think
there's
that
history. So
Yeah.
use the history against other teams.
Yeah, it's kind of like a I don't know.
We didn't find out about Michkov till about a year later.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, like, I think that's. I don't think that Hagen's is as high on their list. I really don't. I think that you mentioned the names. Look, obviously, they're not going to get Misa, but I think their preference is Denwye, O'Brien, Martin.
Yeah,
And O'Brien and Martin are kind of. They could flip.
They could flip.
They
right,
could
for
flip.
sure.
Like,
For sure.
Yeah.
I don't think Denwye is there though.
No, I don't either. It's
So.
a matter
What
of
if
fact.
Martone's there?
I don't think they go there. I don't think they go there.
You got a bit of a logjam at right wing
Yeah, I
already.
don't think they go Martone. I really don't. I think it's going to be curious to see what happens. So, first of all, I think there's a real chance that San Jose doesn't take Misa.
Right.
But Chicago will run to the podium to take him at 3.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying like he's going to fall.
Hey, Bedard, Misa, there's your.
Yeah, right.
Tough,
Like I think that's a real possibility. But I think Denwye could go 2. I really do think he I think
such
he's
a complete player.
I think he's the most complete forward in the draft.
Yeah.
Like all around, understands
his
defense.
injury with the hands. It doesn't scare you.
Yeah, no, I don't.
Like a back.
Yeah, and so I think there's a real chance that happens.
Wow.
The name that I think could slide down and make it interesting that you didn't mention, Bill, is Frondell.
You think he might be there?
I don't know. So let's play this out real quick. So go Schaefer and then Misa Denwye or vice versa, right? Like let's just say
they're the first 3.
they're the first 3. Okay. Now you get to Utah. Utah's an interesting team because they've gone off the board in previous years. So what do they do?
Yeah.
Like do they go Martone? Do they take O'Brien, who's not a lot of people have it as high as 4? Do they take Brady Martin? Right, like there you don't know where they go, right? Maybe they go, and then Nashville, they need a center with size,
right?
So maybe they go Frondell, but I mean, because all their centers are kind of small. But things can. If one team does something a little bit different, it can change everything.
Yeah.
So then if Frondell falls,
like last year,
then you have another pick to make. Yeah,
now you got to make
another 200-foot guy.
Right, now you got to
really
make a
good
decision.
shooter. So you have a decision.
Yeah, and so like that's the one that I don't think anybody's really kind of considering. Yeah. And I think that there's a possibility, not a high chance of it, but I do think there is a possibility that he could.
What I do know is that we're going to be surprised before 4 that one of those teams took somebody.
Yeah.
I mean, these teams, the way they evaluate, especially this draft, and we've talked about it, 32 teams, if you gave them the same 8 players, top 8 players in this draft, they would have them in totally different order. No two teams would have the same thing.
I agree. And I mean, it's such a logical thing, but it doesn't necessarily follow the logic. I look at Chicago, Martone, big winger, a guy played with Bedard, right? And Bedard played a fair amount of wing this past year. He really wants to be a center. I think he's convinced in his own mind he's a center, even though he's a smaller guy. I think it might have contributed to Luke Richardson being dismissed when he was, because he was committed to trying Bedard on a wing. But you go, okay, well, small playmaking center that are put a big winger with them. So if Chicago's the first team to take a winger, then once again, particularly if somebody else goes off the board, then you might have an array of options.
I think there's also going to be another D taken in the top 8 because teams can't help themselves.
Atchison, maybe.
Yeah.
Merca.
Yeah. Team. They just sometimes you look at it and you go, all right, I'm drafting 7th or no, I'm drafting 5th. Do I take the 4th ranked forward or do I take the 2nd ranked D?
Right.
On their board. So sometimes you'll see that happen as well. I think Friday's going to be fascinating at the draft. Do we think that Ant, we're going to see, it's decentralized. We're not going to see guys going from table to table asking what they want from the Chinese restaurant after the draft that night to get the order in place. This is decentralized, so it's going to be a little bit different.
Yeah.
But do we expect to see a lot of trades go down on the draft board during Friday night's first round?
I almost think it might be more.
I think teams wait.
Well, I think it might be more to an advantage to trade later in the round. I still don't think the top, you're going to see any. You might get one. If you get one, that'll be a lot in my mind.
When you get around 16, 18, that's where.
Yeah, and when you start getting into the teens, I think you might start to see it. But I do think that the trades will happen more with a decentralized draft because nobody's like watching you. Who are you talking to?
Yeah.
Whatever, blah blah blah.
Like spotters with binoculars.
Yeah, I think it's all kind of a lot more clandestine because you're in your own place. You're just doing it via text or on the phone or whatever. And so I do think you might get more things done in that regard, trade wise. I just don't think it's at the top of the first round.
I said to Bill on Flyers Daily for Monday, if you want to move up into the teens, it's probably good that you speak French Canadian. Danny Briere does because Montreal's got 16 and 17
back-to-back picks.
Yeah. Well, I think that Montreal's going to try and trade up with those 2 picks.
Okay.
Whether they can accomplish it or not, I don't know. But I think they'd like to get into the top 10.
Yeah, they're an aggressive team. How aggressive does Danny need to be between the draft, free agency, and everything? You can't incur tons of risk right now because you're in the beginning stages of this, and there's no relief. There's no GM that's going to do you a favor to get you out of a mistake. You're going to pay for it. You got to. We talked about this. You almost got to be perfect.
Yeah.
To put yourself in a position where Florida is and be a cup contender. You can't have this lingering noose around your neck of a big mistake when you have a high draft pick.
No, you can't at all. When the previous CBA, you could have a Wade Red and you could just bury the whole thing in the minors. Now you can only bury, I think, 1.1 million maximum in the minors. The rest is counted against your cap. While he'd be playing in the American League. So you have to be careful, obviously, with cap hit, and you have to be careful with term too. I'm interested to see if they're more, and Jonathan Toews maybe is a special case, but he signed a very heavily incentive laden contract for those guys 35 and older.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're not still able to play, it's a low cap hit because they won't hit the incentives. And you only have the ability to make incentive-laden contracts with 35 and older or with rookies for on the entry-level deals. But I think you might see a little bit more creativity with that. Maybe some older guys sign them, and if they can still play, they make more. But
do with Brad Marchand. Corey Perry.
Well, exactly. And Marchand, he'll be fascinating to see where because he had that huge final.
He had a great year, though.
He didn't, but it wouldn't matter the most.
Yeah. Right.
So
it didn't matter until it mattered a whole.
Exactly.
And Perry, he just keeps
that was
the 03 draft.
We were talking Zito before too. That was one of those pickups. Like, wow, sure helped in the playoffs.
Yeah, no question. Let's wrap it up. This was fun. We ought to do this again.
Absolutely.
And when Bundy is available and Russ is available,
for sure,
and get the whole crew together and do a joint episode as well. I'm thinking about doing one of those roundtables again too.
Let's do it.
Flyers Podcasters Roundtable. So maybe we do that right before the season. So a special presentation of Flyers Daily and Snow the Goalie coming together, breaking bread at the Flyers Alumni Golf Outing. Thanks for everybody. Thanks to Brian Smith for his help and assistance and getting this technically off the ground, which was not easy. Thanks to all the guests. Thanks to you guys. And anything you need to plug on Snow the Goalie?
No, we'll be at the. We're doing a show from the draft on Friday.
Yep, draft on Friday.
So we'll be down there. We have
Hard Rock.
Well, yeah, we're at the Hard Rock, but we're not out in the public.
Oh, they got you guys shoved in a closet.
No, well, we're
in Howie's broom closet.
Come on now, that's more. It's better than that. Like we are going to be set up just outside the war room.
Oh,
and have some access. So,
Anthony reporting from the war room.
Yeah, so it'll be good. It'll be good. It'll be good stuff.
So let's take the Situation Room. NBC Nightly News.
Yeah,
it'll be coming to us from the war room.
It'll be kind of,
Brokaw.
It's a little bit there. Like I didn't, Russ. Russ wanted to be out with the public and have the people behind us so he could do his whole shtick. I was like, I got another job to do. Like I got to report on the team. Let's be somewhere where we have a little bit better access. So we're going to be kind of behind the scenes, but we will be broadcasting live so you can tune in online and join us. It's
going to be a fantastic night coming up on Friday. That will be at the draft party. You guys, like you mentioned, will be there. It is in partnership with the Flyers and the Hard Rock Hotel and Casino in Atlantic City. It begins at 6 o'clock. Draft party is going to feature special appearances by Flyers Governor Dan Hilferty. Rick Tocchet will be on hand. Flyers head coach Mark Recchi, Top Fedoric, and many more. Tickets just $6 a person to commemorate the Flyers selecting 6th overall, with proceeds benefiting Flyers charities. Also, a complimentary food voucher will be included with tickets, and parking can be purchased at the venue. Tickets can be purchased at PhiladelphiaFlyers.com. Everybody, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you next time. Very important week on Flyers Daily and Snow the Goalie. Thanks.